Hi, welcome back to Jonesy Chats Wrestling. Once again, we're here this week discussing this past week's WWE Raw. The legends are back. I'm here once again, my regular co-host, Josh Hayes. How are you today, Josh?
Doing great, brother. Doing good. Doing good.
Yeah, me too. Very excited. Obviously, tonight is NXT, so that's going to be fun. But we're here to discuss this past week's Raw. Obviously, the Legends back. And let's get into it then. So, obviously, this is the first Raw of 2021. Obviously, there was no more NFL season, so this was a really good opportunity for WWE to get some new viewers into the product. So the show obviously starts with an opening vignette. It isn't Alexa Bliss, it isn't Randy Orton, it isn't any follow-up from last week. It's Hulk Hogan, basically with a H phone, and it's just a segment basically advertising he's going to be on the show. What are your thoughts of this opening and no Alexa and Randy from the get-go?
I saw that some people online didn't like it, but I didn't hate it because I think what it was supposed to be was a tribute to the commercials they would put wrestlers in the 80s where they were advertising stuff and it made no sense at all. I mean, yeah, like Hulk Hogan promoting a phone. This is kind of weird, but I don't know. I was fine with it. It's whatever. And I mean, I think that Hulk Hogan. I mean, I was a Hulk Hogan fan when I was a kid, and so I think that his over-the-top stuff, I think he can kind of get away with it. And that's something I'm going to talk about throughout the show. There are certain characters that can get away with certain things, and there's certain characters that can't. And that was a big discrepancy for me throughout this whole show. Hulk Hogan can. I mean, he can get away with stuff like that because Hulk Hogan at this point is kind of, over the top, exaggerated, and by like 2021 terms, kind of a ridiculous character.
Yeah, for me, it was a fun opening. Wasn't a massive kind of fan of it. In essence, I get Hulk Hogan's one of your main commodities on the show. He's one of the most over people, potentially to change a rating. I get that. But the fact you're not following up on Alexa and Randy, that was the cliffhanger at the end of last week. And for me, obviously, storytelling and stuff like that, they should have started with that. Also, what was kind of interesting, small critique, we didn't have any of the credits either. I thought, where was the Raw intro? Where was the music? It just kind of started, which was a bit odd. Were you a fan of them missing out the entrance theme this week to Raw?
I didn't actually notice it. I mean,
No.
yeah, I guess because it's kind of a special, and so. But you're absolutely right. The fact that we ended the show last week with Alexa Bliss almost set on fire, and then this week it's just totally forgotten about until later on, is very odd. Even if they are doing a Legends Night, because I don't know, to downplay someone being incinerated that to that degree is very odd.
I think they could have done even a nostalgic intro. I don't know why that wasn't done really. It's just a small thing, but obviously moving forward then. So obviously the show opens up. We get Miz TV. And what it was is obviously the Miz coming out with John Morrison. He then ends up challenging kind of New Day. They end up quarreling. This segment went on forever. For me, it was really painful. It was really, really bad. It was really, really over the top. It was almost a battle of who could be more annoying. It kind of went on. The segment was finally saved when Teddy Long came out and he hinted that the Miz and Morrison should face The Undertaker, basically playing an Alzheimer's gimmick. I'm not too sure if I was a fan of that. It ended up basically them going into a tag match. What was your thoughts of this opening as a start to Raw?
So at one point during the segment, Miz said something that I think everybody watching agree with. Miz said this has gone on for way too long.
Yeah.
And it did. I mean, I'm fine with doing a Miz TV, with the New Day out there and stuff like that. But this one, it felt like they were really just grasping for time. And really later on, I mean, at the very end of the show, the way they had to cut it off early, you can kind of blame that segment because there was no need to devote 10 minutes to Miz and Morrison going back and forth with New Day. Also, one big thing I want to talk about, John Morrison in that segment. I mean, I don't know if people, have started watching wrestling in the last few years understand. John Morrison back in 2010 had like a literal rock star vibe to him. I mean, he was this guy who was cool. He's one of those characters, they've said about certain wrestlers. He was the guy who like all the women wanted to be with and all the guys wanted to be. I mean, but then in this segment, John Morrison's playing the role of a moron. And it's just like he looks so stupid, and it doesn't even match the way his character used to be. And it's going back to what I was just saying a few minutes ago about how, New Day, they can be wacky, they can be over the top, they can be dumb, but that matches. But John Morrison, it doesn't really match what he's been about in the past. And it was just so cringy for me.
Yeah, for me, as I said, I don't want to sort of be too negative from the get-go, but this is one of your most important Raws of the year. This is the first one. You've got a lot of extra eyes potential on the product because of you've lost ratings, and to start the show with such a boring segment, I just felt it was totally underwhelming, really. It didn't follow on from last week's sort of cliffhanger type TV, so for me, it didn't work. Have you got anything else you want to add before we get into the match that happened?
I mean, just as far as the match coming up goes, I think what it looks like for creative is that now that the New Day have dropped the titles of the Hurt Business, they don't really know what to do with them. And so they just kind of throw them in with Miz and Morrison, two teams that, like they've crossed paths a little bit, but what do you do long term, especially if you're just doing the match right now? They don't seem to know what they're doing with the New Day, especially.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think the thing with it is obviously we had this tag match, Miz and Morrison, the New Day. For me, it was okay in ring. From an in-ring perspective, it was fun. It was fine. Obviously, the New Day getting the windfall. Morrison was the one that getting pinned. Nothing was really said about the briefcase. Not much of it was made. Miz, for me, obviously got his briefcase back last week. This week, he should have been so annoying in the fact of he should be, I'm going to cash it in at any moment. But it's another defeat for somebody with the Money in the Bank briefcase, which I'm not really a fan of. I think it was a kind of a mistake, really. I think this match did what it needed to do, but by the time this was done with the opening segment in the match, I was like, oh my God, this is so boring. Have you got anything else you want to add to the match and anything else?
As a wrestling match, it was just, it wasn't terrible, but there was nothing great about it. I mean, some of Kofi's offense was pretty good. John Morrison is a great athlete, and he can do some cool stuff in the ring too. And the thing is, like when you're in there with guys like Kofi and Xavier, he can do his agility type stuff and still play the heel role. That's something that, Lance used to talk to us about, is when you're playing a bad guy, you don't want to come off as too athletic because people will start liking what you do in the ring. But like I said, when you're in there with athletes like Kofi, you can get away with it. So, I mean, it wasn't terrible, but yeah, it just kind of served no real purpose. Miz's Money in the Bank briefcase, I think they put it back on him now, but they still have as little idea of what they're going to do with it long term as they did before he got rid of it to begin with. They just put it back on. It's like, oh, we need to keep it on him for longer, but where the hell we're going with it, we have no idea still.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think you're spot on. I think the thing is, when you got all them legends in attendance, for me, I think your opening segment should have been with some of the legends. I know you had a Hulk Hogan vignette at the start of the show, but I think there was a missed opportunity kind of going on then. We then had like a backstage interview. There was a flashback from last week. Randy Orton's obviously been interviewed by Charlie Caruso. He basically says the Fiend has changed him, and he could basically make the legends know why he's the legend killer. This was obviously the first explanation to last week. It was an okay promo. Randy did the best he could with it. I think he's clearly dampened with Alexa not being present and the Fiend not being present. I think that really sort of hampers this angle. What was your thoughts of this backstage interview?
I mean, what we were talking about, the way they kicked off the show without referencing the fire, I thought it was just strange how, every recap show they did last week, main event this week in WWE, and video packages, like when SmackDown would go to commercial breaks, advertising that Orton was going to set Alexa Bliss on fire. And then your big payoff is about 30 minutes into the show where, I didn't set her on fire.
Yeah,
wait, what? And so then he kind of changes course. It's Legends Night. I'm the Legend Killer. I'm going to go verbally kill some legends. I guess, yeah. If the Fiend's gone and Alexa Bliss is gone, what else has he got to do? So he's going to go do that? Okay, maybe.
Yeah, I just think it was a typical Randy Orton being a jerk, which I kind of enjoy. I think that's fun in that respect, but it's a shame, really, that they're not able to follow things up. It seems week by week with this Randy Orton Fiend feud with Alexa Bliss, they can't continually follow up week on week. They seem to be having to sort of put things back, which is just a strange way of doing it. But we then went to a clip of the New Day and R-Truth. It was a flashback of the TikTok celebration, which led to R-Truth basically dropping the 24/7 title, and that was to Angel Garza. It ended up with a backstage promo where Angel Garza's walking backstage. He bumps into Alicia Fox. She brushes him out. Tatanka's there, and obviously Sergeant Slaughter's there with Mickie James. Garza gave the rose to Mickie James. Sergeant Slaughter got a line saying maggot, and it kind of made Garza look like a joke. Quick question, really. What was Tatanka doing there? He didn't have really... He was just the only one in full gear. They didn't say anything.
Yes!
What a strange spot.
I was gonna point that out later on.
What was your thoughts of this segment and your favourite Angel Garza kind of carrying on this comedy that he's involved in at the moment?
Yeah, it's a spoiler of things to come. Angel Garza looked like a total joke this whole show.
Yeah.
And I already can pick up the vibe that this sounds very negative, but I'm literally, people on past episodes of this have heard me praise the WWE, but I've got nothing to give in terms of compliments for a lot of what we're talking about. Just want to clarify that. Yeah, Tatanka was in full ring gear, and I think he was one of the very few legends who was. And I almost kind of thought it's something that they say in the business is if you're going to a show, even if you're like an old timer, or even if you're a rookie or whatever, if you're going to a show just to hang out, there's a rule in wrestling to kind of always bring your gear. It's almost like a joke to where Tatanka got in his gear hoping like maybe they had a spot for him. Oh man, this guy's hurt. Tatanka needs to jump in and have a match or whatever. But he was the only one. It was just like Kane at the Undertaker's farewell thing.
Yeah, it was. More of a funny question. What do you reckon the conversation was between Sergeant Slaughter, Mickey James, and Tatanka? I wonder what the conversation was.
Who knows what the hell? And actually, that's something that's going to pop up again, too, is these random legends that are going backstage. The way it's framed up, what the hell was the legend in the process of doing? You know, plus, wait, when did Mickey James go from being a regular member of the Raw roster to being a legend? You know, she's actually signed to a contract.
I think she last wrestled in September. She got injured from what I remember, from what I know. It's unconfirmed whether she's going to be back or whether she's now just a legend, but it was a random segment. I think it was throwaway TV. They had to get the legends out there on the spot, which I get. Didn't really do anything for Angel Garza. The only privilege to this, really, I would say, is it got the 24/7 title over on the camera again. It made sure that everyone knew that Angel Garza was the champion at that point, which is probably clever, I think. But promo went nothing. It was fun. It didn't lead anywhere to a certain point. I just thought it was needless. But do you want to go on to the next match, or you got anything else to add on that?
Sure.
Okay, so we had rematch of the century. It was AJ Styles with Omos versus Elias with Jackson Riker. This was a very good match. Interesting points in this match. AJ Styles, for me, seems to be working babyface, which I thought was kind of interesting to see. It's fun to see. They trade a lot of blows. There was a lot of hard-hitting moments. An interesting spot after the match where AJ got the pin for, Omos does like a football punt kick, basically kicking a guitar out of Jackson Riker's hand, which I thought was just absolutely comical. They trusted him to do that, what I thought was entertaining. What's your thoughts of this rematch again and the booking of AJ Styles as a babyface almost?
Yeah, I noticed that too, because I said that from a psychology standpoint, AJ kind of played the babyface in last week's match, but on paper it was heel versus heel. I felt like this match this week had a lot more of a babyface versus heel vibe to it, and I don't know if that means that from here on out they're going to start gearing AJ more toward a babyface role. One thing that I noticed too that has nothing to do with the wrestling match, they're changing the way they pronounce
Omos's name. Yep.
Yeah, it was Omos, but now the announcers were calling him Amos.
Yeah.
But yeah, I will say though, after the match, I didn't mind the spot with the guitar, because there's not a lot of people on the roster. There's not a lot of people in wrestling who could just throw a kick up like that and shatter a guitar. And they are trying. I don't think that he can do any work in the ring right now, but they are trying to up the intimidation factor of him a little bit. And I do think that Jackson Riker and Elias kind of sold it well, the fact that they were just blown away that this weapon that Elias has used to win matches in the past, and this guy just kind of obliterated it instantly.
I agree with you. I think you're very spot on with the points. I think Omos, it was a clever move. It made him look even more intimidating. It was a fun spot. I think him working with AJ Styles is really good. It's going to give Omos some sort of lift, which is what he needs. I'm just interested to see where the payoff is. The payoff with this Omos versus Jackson Riker in 3 or 4 months' time, or do you think this is just a needless feud? And also the other thing I would ask you as well, Josh, were you a fan of a rematch again? It's once again the same thing week after week almost, rather than something new.
No, when AJ first came out, and then they had Elias's music after, I was thinking, oh man, maybe AJ will face Jackson Riker, kind of switch things up. And then Elias was the one doing it. Yeah, it was just kind of, we had this last week, and so where do you go with it? The only new thing we really got was the guitar shot.
Yeah.
But as far as what they're going to do with them, I don't know if we're going to get Omos versus Jackson Riker one-on-one. I think with the way that Omos is so green, a better way to do it is probably a tag match to where AJ and Elias can AJ can help carry stuff for that team. I just think that would be a better quality match, because Jackson Riker used to wrestle all around the South as Gunner. He's been in the business for a long time. He can work, but I don't know if he's the kind of worker you want to get in there and try to carry a new guy. That's the thing. But if you had AJ in there, and Elias is not bad in the ring either, I think it would carry the match a lot better.
Definitely. Yeah. We then had another kind of fun segment. We had Matt Riddle going up to Big Show, and he said to the Big Show, "Have you ever thought about being the big bro?" They sort of traded sort of comedy statements with each other. This ended up with Randy Orton coming out and basically threatening the Big Show, and kind of Randy Orton then just kind of walked away. Nothing was made of it. What was your thoughts of this first Randy Orton segment, and also Matt Riddle in this spot?
I mean, Riddle, he's just been a clown backstage for a while now, which I can't have complete gripe with, because he does get more serious in his matches, and we do see that from him this week. So it's whatever. But the segment with Randy Orton and Big Show, it's just weird how, I mean, we saw Orton with Legends later on in the show, but Big Show was one of the few guys to where he does seem like he's in a position where he could fight back, but he didn't. And
Yeah.
I think out of all the guys, because, later on, we'll talk about it. Like, later on, a lot of the Legends weren't in a position to where they could defend themselves and have any chance against Orton. But the way that Orton said, I ended your career, and then Big Show fires back, I can go anytime you want. If that's true, then why did Big Show back down so easily?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the thing is, if you remember, like Big Show faced Drew McIntyre when Drew won the belt at WrestleMania, like straight away. Where was that Big Show in this spot? I thought it was a bit weird that Big Show didn't stand up to him. I get Randy Orton's being a jerk. It was kind of filler. It got the Big Show spot on the camera, and it further creates Randy Orton being as a jerk. But it didn't really do anything for me. I think it, as you said, it didn't really add up. I was surprised it didn't lead to Orton versus Big Show. Have you got anything else you want to add before we go into that match?
No, yeah, it did. I get the thing about establishing what Orton's vibe is going to be throughout the show, but yeah, you said it didn't add up. It just didn't make sense when you really kind of thought about it.
No, it didn't. We then went to a women's non-title match. We've got the defending champions, Asuka and Charlotte Flair, this time with Ric Flair accompanying, versus Peyton Royce and Lacey Evans. This was a fun match up until kind of the end. Obviously, throughout the match, we had Ric Flair kind of being hit on with Lacey Evans, at least to Charlotte kind of losing her mind. In the end, Charlotte obviously bounced off the ropes and Rick accidentally trips up Charlotte, which leads to Peyton getting a massive win over Charlotte Flair. And for me, it was a weird finish. I was surprised. I think the whole thing with Charlotte and Rick, haven't they been on and off, like continually, like falling out? I think that happened earlier this year, if I'm not mistaken, or last year even, where Rick kind of got disowned. It seems to be a regular thing. Obviously, Rick involved in the finish. It was an interesting finish. The way the commentators played it up, they didn't really know what to make of it. But what was your thoughts of what happened in the match and that kind of finish?
So see, that's what you were just talking about. I could tell from the announcers, they didn't really know how to sell this, because I kind of wonder if what was supposed to happen didn't happen, because what we saw did not make sense. Because like you see Lacey Evans flirting with Ric Flair throughout the thing, and that's fine. Ric Flair, ladies' man, whatever, like easily distracted by someone like Lacey Evans. But like I almost kind of want to think that the finish was supposed to be that Peyton Royce runs toward Ric Flair, and like he goes to reach out and trip her. Maybe he's not even looking because he's looking at Lacey, and he accidentally grabs Charlotte and pulls her down by mistake. But what you see is that Flair's completely looking straight ahead. He's looking right at Charlotte and grabs her leg and trips her up. And then the announcers, when that happened, said, oh, he just tripped up his own daughter, like he did it on purpose. But then when Charlotte confronts him after the match, it's like he did it by accident. And he's like so upset by it. I don't understand what we're supposed to believe just happened, because it doesn't make any sense.
I understand if it's kind of going somewhere. I think we'll try and be positive on it. You've got Peyton Royce, Lacey Evans getting a massive win. I was a bit shocked that Charlotte was the one that kind of got pinned, but I didn't want to pin Asuka, so I'm happy with that. I hope this leads to a match somewhere down the line. Obviously, it ended with Flair and Charlotte falling out again. Charlotte basically disowning Rick again. But for me, it was a sloppy finish. It creates controversy. And this is one of them where they have to follow up next week, I think. If they don't follow up next week, what was the point? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, but what I don't understand. I really don't. I can barely even like complete a sentence about it, because when I think about it, I just don't get it. I don't understand what we were supposed to see with that. I really don't.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think the thing with it is it's very hard. I think the thing with Charlotte is she isn't really, for me, a convincing babyface. So I think seeing her acting heelish at the end was a lot more comfortable for her, I think. And the way that this has happened, it's almost like I had a deja vu feeling, as I said earlier, where it's almost like we've seen Charlotte and Rick fall out, father and daughter fall out before. So I was kind of unsurprised, really. It's almost like, is Rick now a heel? Charlotte's obviously a babyface. How are they going to pay this off next week? Or is this one of them where, we lost this week, we're going to give the Peyton Royce and sort of Lacey a rematch at the pay-per-view? It's one of them where I hope it goes somewhere. If not, what's the point of defeating your tag team champions with no payoff, in my opinion?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the thing about it is, last time Charlotte kind of kicked her dad to the curb, it was in a clearly heelish way, and you felt bad for him. But see, the other night on Raw, Flair cost her the match. So I mean, was her doing that to him justified? Like, was it actually a babyface move after her own dad just screwed her over? And then he's crying like he's trying to get sympathy, and like he doesn't deserve her saying what she's saying to him, but you can't really get mad at her because she's pissed off for something he just did.
It's just a total shambles. So I think the thing with it is, you look at it, they can't make up. For me, this is very much Ric Flair from WCW, wasn't it? It was the old school Ric Flair of you couldn't trust him.
Yeah, but then he's the one you're supposed to feel sorry for when
Yeah.
she's yelling at him.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's
Because, like, hold on, wait. Here's what I'll say. If he tripped her up, and
Yeah.
even if you're just going to use Flair in this one thing that he's not going to be on Raw next week, if he tripped up Charlotte and then he gets arm in arm with Peyton Royce and Lacey Evans and kind of struts off, that's better than what they did. Like, yeah, Flair, he does care about his daughter, but if he's got two women hitting on him, he's the, wheeler dealer, limousine riding, and he walks off, whatever,
I
That
would
would
have.
work better, honestly.
I'd agree with it. I would have one extra bit on Raw Talk. I don't know if you saw that. Charlotte did try and cover by saying that it was an accident. She feels sorry for Rick to a certain point, and her father's always kind of getting in the way. But I hope this goes somewhere next week. It's one of the things they built up out of this show. So, have you got anything else to add before I move on to the next segment?
Just that we're going to see Ric Flair later in the show, and he's back to the babyface role.
Yeah,
and that also kind of made things weird to me.
Yeah, we'll get into that. Okay, so we then had Drew McIntyre. He was shown backstage getting ready. Sheamus showed up to tell him to basically give an extra kick to Keith Lee for him. It ended up with Hulk Hogan and Jimmy Hart coming. It was just basically a promo. Jimmy Hart basically chased off Sheamus with a megaphone, which was cringeworthy. And it just basically had Drew and Hulk do a promo for the main event. It was a cool segment. It was great to see Drew and Hulk Hogan together. I kind of enjoyed it. It was the first time we'd seen a Legend of the Night. I felt that he was important. I almost felt that it was great to see somebody finally getting the new talent put over. Really, it was somebody on the current roster getting put over by an established vet, which is the first time we've kind of seen that all night, in my opinion. I thought it was very clever. What was your thoughts of this segment?
Yeah, I mean, I thought the stuff with Jimmy Hart and Sheamus was stupid. It was just kind of weird. But the stuff with McIntyre and Hogan, I did like it. And what I liked about it, which this is one of the few times this happened on this show, you had the legend approach the current superstar. And so, like, the superstar's in the middle of doing something. McIntyre's talking to Sheamus, or then Hogan comes up. And so it actually makes sense. And what Hogan says and does adds some substance to it. And I loved the way they kind of did the what you gonna do. And they were completely in sync and stuff like that. Even with the brother, then they start, like, it's kind of cheesy, but it's cool. And, like, I think for kind of newer fans, it's very cool to see the current champion doing something with one of the most famous WWE champions of all time.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. I think it's definitely cool. I think it's great nostalgia. I think, as I said, Hulk Hogan was one of your main draws on this show alongside Ric Flair, so it was a great spot for Hogan. I think it made Drew look $1 million as well, which was clever.
Yeah.
I think my only complaint with this, I would say this is just probably jumping ahead maybe slightly, was that you got Jimmy Hart chasing Sheamus. I thought this would have been a perfect opportunity for Sheamus to use this as a momentum to turn heel later on in the show, which wasn't used. I think this would have been a great lever for Sheamus to say, well, Hogan really rates you. What about me? What about me? There was none of that, really, which I was a bit surprised. Do you think that was a missed opportunity based on this segment?
It could be, but, like, the problem is if they're going to do with
what they do, what we'll go into.
I know I'm putting the cart before the horse, but if they're going to do Goldberg against McIntyre, then you forget the Sheamus heel turn.
Yeah, no, I get that. I do get that. It makes sense. I think just logically and stuff, but yeah, I do get what you're saying. So let's go forward. We then had obviously this match that's been building for months. It was the undefeated Bobby Lashley versus Riddle. Let's go into this match. The match was okay. This is where the problem starts. This is going to be a rant, I'm afraid. If you don't like rants, please forgive me now in advance. We had Lashley, obviously, change channels. So not only did obviously this match they traded blows, been building for a while, and we get sort of Riddle somehow get the win. Obviously, Lashley does get him to tap out. Lashley obviously ignores it, then Riddle gets the roll up. So not only are you throwing 6 months worth of win streak down the drain, this makes Riddle look like a total utter joke. Riddle's obviously meant to be a babyface here, yet he's winning by heel tactics. WWE, what are you doing? Have you got anything to add before? What's your opinion, Josh? I'm jumping ahead now.
You've talked about how they've protected Bobby Lashley, and I will say throughout this match, they did, like, it is where I don't know who the producer is who is behind this match, but they make an effort to make Bobby Lashley look almost unstoppable every time. Little nuances like Riddle hitting him with a finisher multiple times and Lashley kicking out. And even with the roll up at the end, Lashley kicked out right after 3. And one thing has nothing to do with what we're talking about. I've never seen Bobby Lashley sweat that much, dude. He was dripping in sweat. You would think somebody poured like a whole case of water over him or something. But yeah, it was strange. And it's another one where I think the commentators didn't even really know how to put it over, because I heard Tom Phillips or Byron Saxton saying, like, well, Did Riddle even know the referee was turned away? Did Riddle actually try to tap out to give up? Or did Riddle know the ref was turned around, so he tapped to kind of throw off Bobby Lashley? And then I think Samoa Joe was the one who was saying, and this is a great point, especially with heels, like I see Shayna Baszler do all the time. When a heel wins by submission, even after the person taps, they keep the hold locked in for after the bell rings. So why did Lashley let go of him as soon as he tapped? Like, a heel usually would just crank that thing in and knock this guy out. And I think if that wasn't the finish, that's what Bobby Lashley would do every other time.
Yeah, the trouble with it, as I said, this guy hasn't lost a singles match since June 14th last year. He's been unbeaten in that respect, and the way you're getting this windfall here, it just doesn't really make sense. I get you need to create this match, you have to give Riddle some sort of chance, but for me, there's two problems. A, where was the Hurt Business? They didn't really do anything, and B, where was Adam Pearce? This is where I think you're creating a baby face that's getting injustice, if that makes sense. I think the fact that your baby face is having to cheat to win, I get it's a fluke, and rather than create, Bobby Lashley's lost the big match now, there was no reaction. It was almost like acceptable that he lost the match, really. I get they're probably going to have a match at the pay-per-view or a rematch. The trouble for me now is if Lashley does win the rematch, I think what's the point? I think what's the point of this one loss? It's not going to mean anything. Riddle has to win the belt now going forward, I think. I think Bobby Lashley, it's a small loss, but for me, I think when you're making him a joke, he's one of the only people in the roster he protected for months alongside Roman Reigns and Drew. It's a bit frustrating. Anything else you want to add?
And now, as what you were just talking about, and now Riddle has kind of shattered that mystique. The only other thing I'll add, I want to say something kind of positive. It was cool to see Lashley bust out the old school Dominator again. I don't know if he did that because Ron Simmons was there, but that was his finisher back in 2006. And his move now is sort of a modified Dominator where he kind of flapjacks him over. But yeah, in the middle of the match, he just hit Matt Riddle with the old one.
Do you think this is just another segment, I would say, kind of on the same topic to a certain point? Do you think they missed an opportunity not having Ron Simmons do anything with the Hurt Business? Because I thought that could have been good fun. He could have done something, the whole nation domination, that type of thing. He really could have played off of that, I felt, which they could have done on this show, which they didn't do. Yeah,
it would have been good. Because there's obviously the comparisons between those two factions. Yeah.
It's only a small thing. I know you can't do everything on every show, but that's it. Is there anything else you kind of want to go on with this match and segment, or do you want to go on to the next backstage segment again?
We can keep it going. I don't know what they're going to do with Lashley now.
Who's winning, though? That's actually, before we go forward, who's winning at the Rumble potentially? Is it going to be Bobby Lashley or Matt Riddle?
If Lashley beats Riddle, then what the hell does all of this mean, That's the thing.
The problem is you can't get the belt off him. Unless the only way to get the belt off him, I would have said, would have been a triple threat where you don't have to be pinned. But now you've done it. I think I'd be a fan of Lashley winning. I think Lashley's a great talent. Not Lashley, sorry. Riddle's a great talent. Lashley's very talented as well. I think either way, it'll be a fun match. But I think the cheap finishes, they've got to start booking things a bit more clever. That's all I'd say.
Yeah.
Yeah, we then had a backstage segment. Mark Henry's obviously backstage. He's on some sort of scooter, and it ends up with Randy Orton basically threatening him. And it basically, Randy Orton tells Mark Henry to get out there before he attacks him. It was a really sort of sad segment. It made Henry look really vulnerable. I was surprised nobody stuck up for Mark Henry here. I felt this was another missed spot, and this is deja vu. So once again, we've got Randy Orton here. There's no real mention of Alexa Bliss. There's no real mention of what he's done to The Fiend. It's just another segment just to get Mark Henry on TV. I felt it was a shame, really. What were your thoughts?
Well, I actually had less gripe with this one than I did with the Big Show.
It's slightly better, but he could have attacked him.
Because Mark Henry, though, it's understandable just by looking at him with this scooter and stuff. That he's had some kind of surgery or he's rehabbing or something. So it makes sense that even a guy like the world's strongest man is not going to fight Orton because he's not 100%. And I do think that Mark Henry did a great job of selling that. Like, you could see his frustration. He's like, God, I really wish I could fight this guy right now, but I know if I fight him on one leg, he's going to kick my ass. And the way that he kind of regrettably rolled away on the scooter, I think out of a lot of the segments with Orton backstage and these legends, this one was actually one of the ones that was a little more well done, and it made complete sense about the message they were trying to send.
There's one crucial thing as well that I did miss from this promo. We also had Ricochet interact with Mark Henry beforehand, which was interesting. I thought it was great to see Henry and Ricochet sort of comment to each other. But for me, there was a couple of things. As I said, we've got them to... There's no real payoff to this. Orton basically threatening Henry, which was okay. I get it. You want to be Orton's a heel and etc. But what I would say is, where was Retribution with Ricochet? Why were they not involved in some sort of element with this? Do you think that was a missed opportunity this week again?
Well, yeah, and plus, I mean, maybe they can in a few weeks from now, or maybe they can next week. But the problem is Ricochet talks to Mark Henry, and he's never seen again on Raw.
Yeah, that's the thing. What I would say as well, if anybody's watching, if you did see Raw Talk, Retribution did a fantastic promo. Mustafa Ali, did you see that promo where he basically said that what's the point of legends? They're taking TV time, which I was with him there. I thought it was excellent. His work on Raw Talk, he needs to be doing this on the main roster, really, on the main show every week.
Yeah, the only problem with it is that, you want to book Retribution as heels, but I think Ali said what a lot of the fans agree with after watching that Raw. And so, I think for a lot of people in the wrestling community, Ali kind of turned babyface with that.
Yeah, no, it was spot on. It was almost like a pipe bomb promo. It was that type of gist, if that makes sense. If anybody hasn't seen it, recommend it. It clearly was kind of the truth in that respect. I accepted it. I think for me, I don't know what stopped Retribution attacking Tatanka or somebody on this show. I don't know why nobody gave that rub, because if anybody needs a lift, it's going to have to be Retribution, I think.
You're right. You're right. This would have been a good opportunity to kind of reestablish them as these guys who kind of take over. When you have a themed show like this Legends Night, if Retribution kind of is supposed to hijack things and jump the system, this was a good opportunity that they did not take advantage of.
Definitely. We then had another sort of match. It was Shayna Baszler, Dana Brooke. It was going to be Shayna Baszler, Mandy Rose. Baszler went in and basically took Mandy Rose out. Dana Brooke came out as a hero. This was a quick match, and then Dana Brooke got the submission victory. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe they got Dana Brooke beating Shayna Baszler. I was just like, oh, what are you doing? I thought this was really, really kind of disappointing. I think obviously post-match, Baszler got some revenge, and then Rose came out. I was asking two things. A, where was Nia Jax? And B, can you believe that Dana Brooke beat Shayna Baszler? What's that about?
Well, it's a weird thing because they made Baszler look very strong. It made it look like it took a lot of effort from Mandy Rose and Dana Brooke just to get an advantage on her after the match.
Yeah.
But it also made Baszler look a little dumb because, yeah, I get that she's got the Kirifuda clutch or whatever locked in, but when Brooke rolls her back into the pinfall, a fighter like Shayna Baszler should know, okay, I've got to break this thing at least for a second to kick out of the pinfall. It did make her look a little dumb to keep the submission locked in, even if it means that she loses the match. I don't think that completely matches up with this intellectual fighter that Shayna Baszler is supposed to be.
I just think they did nothing in the tandem. It was almost like the Nia Jax Baszler tandem didn't exist, I felt, which was a bit unusual. Not that I'm a massive fan of Nia Jax, but I think it was a missed opportunity, really. But I get that they're trying to create sort of Shayna Baszler, but this was a strange way, really. I think Dana Brooke, this is a bit like 1-2-3 kid beating Razor Ramon on Raw 93 or something. It felt like that to me. It felt that I couldn't believe what I was watching in some respect.
Yeah, and the problem is, do they actually have plans to go with it? Are they actually going to push Dana Brooke? I think it was more so just to kind of do something and with Baszler, but what benefit does any segment get from this next week,
Yeah, definitely. We then had a backstage segment. We had Ric Flair talking to IRS and Molly Holly. Orton once again shows up. It ends up with Rick basically reminding Randy of all the things he taught him, and Randy basically just embarrasses him. There was no real mention of Randy Orton punting Ric Flair before. That seemed to have been forgotten. I think that wasn't really mentioned. And once again, this kind of made Randy Orton look like he did look like a really bad evil heel here, which I kind of enjoyed it. But Ric Flair, he's a babyface here. He was a heel earlier in the show. What's kind of going on? I felt for me, it just made Ric Flair look really, really poor. I think he couldn't even really have a response to Randy Orton's insults, which I think was just stupid. Ric Flair has always been really witty and really clever before. His retorts always been great. It was really missing here. This segment didn't do anything for me, really.
Yeah, well, so, you mentioned before, you were asking what the hell are Sergeant Slaughter and Tatanka and Mickie James standing around talking about. I think it's the same thing. We have this weird trio of Molly Holly, IRS, and Ric Flair, like God knows what. I mean, these characters have never really had anything in common together, and suddenly they're talking. And, yeah, I mean, one thing I did like is that with Big Show and Mark Henry, once Orton starts verbally berating them, they just kind of stood there and like took it. Whereas Flair did kind of talk back to Orton and kind of argue with him and stuff like that. And I didn't mind that. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what the hell they're doing to Ric Flair because he kind of screwed over his daughter, and then he's this guy we're supposed to feel sorry for when Orton is bullying him.
Yeah, no, I agree. We then obviously had this random match between Randy Orton and Jeff Hardy. This is obviously a rival we had that went on many years ago. They obviously had a Hell in a Cell match many years ago as well. This was an okay match. It went on for kind of 14 minutes. We got Randy Orton getting the pinfall here, which I wasn't surprised at. A couple of kill fins. Randy Orton, when he sort of pulled on Jeff's earlobes, that was kind of a bit gross. So I kind of thought, fair play, Randy Orton, you're showing a diva you are. I think a couple of key things here for me. There was no retort from the Legends. Legends didn't do anything or didn't get involved for the whole night, which I thought was, what are you doing here? You've been building Randy Orton up all night with Legends, yet they don't get involved in the finish. Another thing, there was no Visionette or anything for the Fiend or Alexa. That wasn't even really mentioned here. So the past few weeks have been totally dropped, it seems. And you're just having this singles match with no build. I thought it was a throwaway. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, because they're clearly not really looking to push Jeff Hardy. I mean, I was surprised how long the match went. And as far as the format of the match, 90% of it was Randy Orton kicking Jeff Hardy's ass.
Yeah,
Jeff had a few fleeting moments where he would come back, but I think the way they're booking both guys, it makes sense that Orton's in a much higher position than Jeff Hardy right now. Also, I don't know if you saw this, but the finish with the twist of fate and the RKO was the exact finish to their 2008 Royal Rumble match.
Wow, it's amazing, isn't it? I knew they'd faced before, but I didn't realise that. It's very nostalgic. I think it was a fun segment. I get Randy Orton had to win. He had to follow up his work. But for me, I was a bit disappointed once it was done. We had nothing else more to it. It wasn't like there was any reason for him to win, really. It wasn't like winning elevates him in any way.
Yeah, there was no bigger picture in terms of either position they put him in with The Fiend or with these Legends. There was no acknowledgement of that at all.
An interesting comment as well. I don't know if you're aware as well, Josh. Apparently, this was meant to be the main event of the night originally, but up until Saturday, supposedly.
That's a good decision they made to switch that up.
Yeah, definitely. We then went to a next segment. We obviously had the Lucha House Party. One of your favourites, Grand Metalik, after last week. He's obviously shown.
That's right.
Melina, and it was just a fun segment, feel good segment. It got Melina on camera. It creates the Lucha feel. What was your thoughts on Melina mixing with this Lucha House Party tandem?
Well, I'm fine with Melina mingling with Lucha House Party, but this is actually what I was talking about before about how some of these legend spots were kind of cringy and just they go overstep reality. Because what the hell was Melina doing backstage? We see her just kind of standing there. She's just kind of standing there, and then Lucha House Party approach her. And that's what I was talking about with Hulk Hogan and McIntyre. I think it's better to have the legend approach the current superstar, because we got the superstars approaching the legends. Like what is that? And I think a lot of Melina fans, because there's been rumors for a while that Melina is going to show up in WWE again.
Yeah,
I think a lot of Melina fans were very disappointed. This is literally all we saw from her, besides being out later on for the main event.
I think she did some very good work in NWA Power. I'd be a fan if she got signed, but it was fun to see her on there. It was a great use of her. I felt it really worked. I think it created some interest. This then led obviously to a tag team match, which was the tag team champions, Hurt Business, Benjamin and Alexander versus Lucha House Party. And once again, the underdogs get the win. The Lucha House Party get the windfall. The person that got the win here was Dorado. He obviously got the pinfall. For me, a couple of things. I was shocked that we got this. This is once again a bit of an overkill on the shots on this show. I'm a fan of this if this goes somewhere. The main complaint, I don't know if you agree with me, Josh, is it's not Grand Metalik that's getting the win here. It's Lindsay Dorado, which I thought, what was that about, really? I think you're pushing Grand Metalik at the moment, so why is Lindsay getting the win here? Were you shocked at this result?
I agree. And actually, I was intrigued because when I saw they were facing Lucha House Party, I was like, well, damn, like you've got Grand Metalik having this title match on NXT. So you've got to keep him. You can't have him lose because then he has zero credibility against Santos Escobar.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, having Grand Metalik get the pin, that would have been a great lead into, oh, man, he's got all the momentum in the world going against Escobar for the Cruiserweight title. But, the bigger picture of this, well, there's two things. Number one, I think it's very obvious that a couple of weeks ago, a member of WWE Creative had some sort of dream and woke up and said, oh my God, we got to push the hell out of Lucha House Party for no reason at all, which I don't mind because I think
they're talented.
They're great workers. They're very good in the ring. But the other thing is we're now introducing this new angle that the Hurt Business, there's dissension in there because, when they won the tag titles, we saw this spot where Alexander tagged himself in, but he jumped right in and won the match for them. Whereas this week, it's the fact that they're not on the same page and Alexander's kind of going into business with himself that cost them the match.
I think this continued the running theme of the Hurt Business losing, which I thought was kind of interesting. I get the tension, but for me, this is your tag team champions that are losing here. You should keep them strong. They've not had the belt long. Unless this is going to lead somewhere, you can't see Lucha House Party getting a match at the Royal Rumble, can you? So for me, it was almost like a throwaway loss, really.
Yeah, I agree.
Have you got anything else you want to add before we go into the next backstage segment? There's a lot of backstage segments.
I'm just wondering what they're doing with the Hurt Business because, yeah, we did see all three of the guys lose. And there's some frustration and there's fighting, a little bit of arguing between Benjamin and Alexander. And the problem is you have them fighting, but they're the tag champs. And so that's kind of a weird thing. Because if they weren't the champs, okay, you want to split them, you split them up. But how easily do you split up your tag team champions when they've got the titles?
Yeah, I agree. I've got one bit of positivity from this segment. I think besides the match was okay, was at least Benjamin was the one that got kind of pinned. They protected Cedric, which was good. Cedric's the one that's been getting the windfalls for the Hurt Business tandem. So I thought that was clever. I thought that was a smart move at least.
Oh, yeah. I mean, besides Lashley, Cedric Alexander is definitely the other guy in the Hurt Business who the company is trying to protect to a degree.
Yeah, definitely. We then had another backstage segment. Tori Wilson was there talking to Nikki Cross, another random alignment. We get the 24/7 champion, Angel Garza, sharp with a rose. Tori told Angel that Cardi B and Ariana Grande are in a dark room next door, which was kind of random. He goes through, sees none other than the Boogeyman. It ends up basically with R-Truth basically getting the pinfall on Garza, which is a change of the 24/7 title. It ends up with Ron Simmons walking up to Garza saying, damn. Once again, another random. So what were your thoughts again of this segment? This was one of your favourites, Garza. He got totally buried in this segment.
I mean, it was very corny, very hokey. Yeah. And the thing is, I think as far as the names of those celebrities that Tori Wilson dropped, I think someone from WWE Creative or maybe Vince McMahon told them, just go and Google the top celebrities. Who do the kids like nowadays? And like just listed three of them off. Who are some popular people on social media or something? But then it's weird because this is kind of where one of those things to where if you think about it more, it makes zero sense. So we're supposed to believe that Tori Wilson collaborated with the Boogeyman to somehow set up Angel Garza.
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense. Another thing that I think was missed here was the fact we had obviously Nikki Cross there. She hasn't been seen for weeks. She's meant to have that history of Alexa. That was totally utterly missed. I think the placement of Nikki Cross, what connects Nikki Cross and Tori Wilson and Ron Simmons? Nothing at all again, this relates basically to what we said. It was a throwaway segment. It got the 24/7 title over, but the placement of legends on this show up to this point, I think, has been one of the worst I've seen, unfortunately. I thought it was but I think it doesn't really do anything, and I think it just cements Angel Garza really, unfortunately, as a bit of a job at the moment.
Yeah, and actually that's something that I was going to say before. Like a big theme for me this whole night was quantity over quality.
Yeah.
And that's the thing with these legends. You know, I think it would have been much better having like 5 or 6 of them on the show and have them in meaningful segments and stuff like that. Whereas what we got instead is almost 20 of them in these random little spots. And it's really all they do. And it serves absolutely no purpose at all. And going back to what we were talking about earlier, I get that fans love to see Ron Simmons with the damn shirt saying damn and stuff. But a much better use for him nowadays would be in some kind of segment with the Hurt Business. Yeah.
Definitely. We then went to this main event. So obviously we had the legends at ringside, sort of on the rampway. Tatanka full dressed as always. It was the most obvious apparent one. This match for me, they had a lot of time. It was a main event pay-per-view level match. It was a really, really good match. Really loved the sort of the spirit bomb and all the stuff. I think the whole sort of stuff where he did the flip and stuff like that, the future shot DDTs and all that. I think it was a fun match. I think it did well. Obviously Drew got the win here, much like we predicted last week. And I think it was great. There was never really a teaser, Drew losing the belt. What were your thoughts on the match before we go to what happened next?
This has probably been the most negative episode of Jonesy Chat's Wrestling I've ever done.
I don't want to be too negative.
Hold on. Hold on. What I was going to say, it kind of has been, but I'm going to turn things around a lot right now because this match was fantastic. For me, I loved it. I loved the story that was told. I mean, because the story throughout the match it's one of the hardest we've ever seen McIntyre have to work to keep a hold of his title because everything he was throwing, he was having to do some moves you never see him kind of do because he's getting desperate to do things. And, you know, any concern someone had when there was a rumor a few weeks ago that Keith Lee was being sent back to the Performance Center, I think it's very clear after this match that WWE has a lot of faith in Keith Lee. And honestly, anybody backstage who doesn't believe in him after watching that match, I think their opinion was completely changed. It was just a wonderful match. I mean, a lot of spots were amazing. We see Keith Lee hitting a Spanish fly at some point. And, you know, I thought it was kind of cheesy at first, but I actually liked having the legends out there so you can see these shots of them reacting to this fantastic wrestling match. And I remember with the Spanish Fly in particular, they had a great shot of Mickie James, like literally mind blown that someone Keith Lee's size did it. And that's sort of what you need. You know, you've got these legends kind of putting over Keith Lee by just watching him and reacting to him and stuff like that. Also, I have never seen a power bomb done onto the corner of an announce table like that, especially with a guy the size of Keith Lee. Yeah, these guys really went all out for this match. And it was a great turnaround for what's been a mediocre, confusing show.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think this was definitely $1 million match. I think match of the night. I think both wrestlers looked credible. The Spanish Fly was an excellent spot, and I think this clearly shows what Keith Lee can do. Really, really enjoyed it. I thought Drew winning was smart. I thought that was clever. I liked it. I thought it was fun. Have you got anything else to add before we go into what happened next?
No, just that it was very good.
It was a great main event match.
You know, regardless of whatever else was going on the show, this match, and it got about 30 minutes too. This match was a great opportunity as a fan to kind of get time to hit the reset button and still sit back and enjoy a good wrestling match.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. We then obviously had Drew's obviously retained the belt. It looked like he was about to do a promo, but none other than Goldberg's music hits. It ends up kind of with Goldberg and Drew trading sort of insults. Actually, it's not really Drew trading insults. It's just Goldberg basically saying that he doesn't respect the legends. And it basically ended up with Goldberg challenging Drew for the Royal Rumble. For me, a couple of key things from this. I don't really get where this came from. They cut a promo, from what I understand. Says Drew was scheduled to do a promo basically on the legends that kind of didn't happen. So Goldberg had to come out. They were rushing for time. Goldberg struggled with the promo for me. He's not a great talker, so he really struggled with that. And I think for me, when I saw them sort of square up and Drew get pushed down, I was like, oh my God, this is awful. I was just so despondent by this point. I think for me, I just think it is very uncomfortable. I think this is a match that's a throwaway. I'm not a massive fan of Goldberg. His work before sucked. Everyone seems to have forgot this guy lost to Braun last year at WrestleMania. He's not done anything since, so why is he the number one contender? And I get you need to put a legend over. I get that to a certain point. You've got nobody ready, allegedly. But considering they've only come up with this last Saturday, I felt it was a wasted spot. For me, the person that should have been in this spot, there's two obvious ones for me I would like to have seen, depending obviously if they're ready, logistics and stuff like that. I'd say I'd love to have seen Braun Strowman come back in this spot, or if you'd built him properly, Bobby Lashley would have been the one I'd rather see. What were your thoughts of this in this segment and what happened?
It made no. I mean, I know I've said this a lot throughout the show about a lot of matches and a lot of segments, but it made no sense. Yeah. I mean, because you were saying that McIntyre was supposed to say something, but it is weird that McIntyre. He's never. When have we seen him disrespect anybody over the last year? I mean, we've literally seen him in this show bonding with Hulk Hogan and stuff like that. McIntyre's arguably been one of the most respectful characters on Raw. And we were saying before we went on the air, and I know some fans online have said this too, everything you did with Randy Orton throughout the show, Goldberg's promo would have made 100% sense against Randy Orton.
Yeah, it would have.
But it made Goldberg look kind of crazy. Like, what the hell is Goldberg talking about? Yeah. Like, has he actually watched Drew McIntyre? Like, does he know what he's talking about? And I say that as someone who surprisingly does like Goldberg more than a lot of today's fans do. I think that Goldberg is very limited and kind of a risk almost in what he can do in the ring. But I have enjoyed Goldberg's intensity in certain promos and stuff like that. Even the build up to the match with The Undertaker, I liked Goldberg's intensity. But yeah, it was just kind of all over the place in this. And I don't see how any fans could watch this and say, I agree with Goldberg and say, yeah, man, you stand up to McIntyre for pushing around these legends. What are you talking about? What has McIntyre done?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the problem with this is the spot and placing. I get you want to go off with a cliffhanger, but for me, it was just groans. I know they piped in cheers and stuff, but I was just groaning at this point. Let's look at the history. Goldberg has been putting out verbal insults to Roman Reigns. That's kind of where it's at previously. Obviously, that never happened. The fact they come up with this with 3 days' notice, I get that. They want to improve the ratings. He is a legend in that respect, but for me, this is a spot where you needed if you're going to return anybody, if you're going to go out and you want a legend there, for me, you need to go out and pay the money for a Brock Lesnar or CM Punk. I'm sorry. I know it's unrealistic probably getting them. I know they're maybe not available, but this was a spot really for me. Goldberg versus Drew at the Rumble. Am I excited? No, I'm not. I think this is the only positive to this is that Drew's probably going to get a win against Goldberg, which will make him look even better. But for me, I just hope Goldberg doesn't do what he did to The Fiend in the respect of, I hope Drew's win streak and Drew's momentum is not putting over Goldberg for me, because Goldberg shouldn't even be in this spot. I think out of all the legends you had there, this was the most disappointing for me. I felt it was a total underwhelming, really. They built nothing for next week as well based on this. in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, we see the damage that Goldberg's win did to The Fiend and how hard it was to build The Fiend back up after that. And if they actually had Goldberg beat him at the Rumble, a star, I mean, McIntyre's been this rising star for years, but this last year has been his really, main event level push. If Goldberg does that, if Goldberg somehow politics his way into beating him and winning the title, it will destroy everything that you've done in creating the star that Drew McIntyre is. It's totally different than when Randy Orton did beat McIntyre, and McIntyre had those 3 weeks where he's chasing to get the belt back, and it actually didn't destroy McIntyre's credibility. It might have even reinforced his credibility as a champion. This would not do that. No, McIntyre deserves to be protected, and McIntyre, for all the contributions he's done and how much he's run with the ball that WWE's given him, McIntyre deserves a lot better than to be speared and jackhammered in 3 minutes.
Yeah, I agree. I think the thing is with it is it did what it needed to do in that respect. It's something different. It creates a little bit of buzz and interest, probably for the wrong reasons. Do you think going forward this is going to have any positive impact on the ratings? I know this week was sort of a last chance throw. They didn't have NFL against them. Do you think this is going to basically make the ratings go up, Goldberg coming back, or do you think this is one in a month's time we're going to think, oh, that was a waste of time, basically?
I mean, I do, and I always have in the past of wrestling, some people would say remain stupidly optimistic.
Yeah,
I don't think so. I don't think so, but I would love for them to somehow find a way to make people want to watch it. Like I said, I don't always dislike Goldberg in segments with promos. Like, I think that Goldberg's intensity can be very nice. Maybe there is a way they can make this match work to where it is entertaining, but Goldberg has wrestled such a basic format for the last 3 or so years since he came back, 4 years actually, and I just don't really see how it can happen. But I would love for it to. I don't actually like for wrestling to be bad. I'm not one of these people that likes to be negative. I'm working with what we got this week,
I agree. I think this is a total opposite to last week. Last week's show was so much fun. I really enjoyed last week's show. There was a lot to talk about. This week I come out thinking about there isn't much to talk about. They didn't follow up any of the angles. Pretty much none of the angles got followed up on. They started last week. For me, I'm going to go to you first with a rating. All I would say lastly about Goldberg is if Goldberg's going to work as a heel, I think his heel work can work. He's not a great talker, so as a heel, I think he'll be okay. I think they need to book him as a heel in this respect. And it's a shame they haven't got a crowd there, because if he was a heel, he'd get a lot of heat. I think that would be sensible. For once, I'm going to go to you, Josh. What's your rating on the show? Let you choose first once.
All right. So I'm going to break down how this works. So the show, in a way, gets a 3 out of 10 for the inconsistent confusingness, but I'm going to bump it up to a 5 out of 10 because I'm going to give 2 stars to the Keith Lee Drew McIntyre match alone. That match redeemed the show for me significantly, and honestly, it was enough, to bring it up 2 notches. So I'm going to go 5 out of 10, but understand almost half of that rating is purely because of that wonderful main event we got to watch.
I don't want to copy you and echo you. I agree. I think the thing is that main event almost saved the show in that respect. For me, it's a 6 out of 10. We got some fun moments, a lot of nostalgia, missed opportunity with Legends. They didn't really do enough for me to bring fans back. This was your one opportunity going into the ratings to get Legends back, to try and get fans watching again. You didn't do anything. And for me, this was a total disconnect from last week. As I said, last week we left with a sense of optimism. They're really building stuff up, but there wasn't anything announced for next week, which I think is a big mistake. Have you got anything else to add before we wrap up this rating, this show, Raw review?
Well, I said when they did that Raw reunion, I actually enjoyed that, and I think a lot of fans liked it too. And a lot of the Legends were used in very relevant ways. I think that this Legends night, the other night, was as bad as that Raw reunion was good.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with you. I think it wasn't positive. I'm interested to see what happens next. Goldberg versus Drew, Royal Rumble. God forbid that Drew loses the belt, because I think that could be a rant video in itself, I think, if that happens. But no, that's about it, really. Have you got anything else you want to add before we wrap up tonight's show?
McIntyre dropping the belt to Goldberg is the equivalent to WWE just biting a cyanide capsule.
There's one positive. At least Goldberg's probably not winning the Rumble. That's out there now, I guess. I guess that's one positive.
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely. Okay. This has been Jonesy Chats Wrestling. Thank you for watching the video. Thank you to all the recent subscriptions and subscribers to the channel. If you like the video, please give us a thumbs up. Please leave a comment as well. It's great to hear your opinion. If you disagree with us, please put in your comments why. But it has been Jonesy Chats Wrestling. I've been George, joined by Josh as always. And no doubt we'll be back next week to discuss Raw and what's happening in WWE. Thank you very much.
That's right.